Erik is a founder of the world of open accounts, and his topic for his speech is challenges and opportunities in international receivables finance. So we will have a look into factoring and receivables finance activities in the EU, and we'll discuss major trends that he would see especially in the context of digitization of processes, creating opportunities. So I think what is also an important point here is where do we come from in terms of receivables finance and where do we go to? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities that we would see? So Erik, welcome, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Robert. Thank you for having me. I'm just technically now seeing, okay, now I see also my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm trying to get access to the way of moving the forward the slides. So am I the only one who is technologically completely unliteral? I have a small problem here, I must admit. All right, so this is back in next. I see this now, but I don't see my slides. Okay, sorry for this little bit of a messy introduction. I think I will try to do it like this. It's not easy, but it will happen. Thank you again, Robert, for having me. It was until now very interesting presentations, and the previous speaker was certainly also very, very interesting. I hope maybe we can have him one of these days also in the World of Open Account meeting. So what I would like to do in the coming 15 minutes is maybe two things. On one hand, give a little bit of an overview of some very general figures and evolution in the world of receivables finance, which have already been commented in detail, of course, this morning by Peter Mulroy. So I'm not going to go into details, but just trying to lift a little bit of a looking in the future and trying to lift something of the glass crystal ball for the future. So, and then after that, I would like to give you some ideas. It's not rocket science neither, but some observations we in the world of open accounts see in the world of receivables finance today. The big trends, the big challenges, the big opportunities, as you rightly mentioned. So, if I'm having a strange look in my face, is because I'm trying to figure out on which slide I am, but it should hopefully work. If things go well, you should now see a slide with general evolution of receivables finance in the last years, which is very well known, and we heard as well from Peter last year, around 6 or 7% of decline. Nothing new to that, of course, and it's almost traditional to know that receivables finance is also following the crisis. We have seen the crisis of 2008 with a big dip, and then we saw the crisis now even more in 2020 of the COVID crisis. Now, why is that important? Why would I like to mention this? Because my co-founder, who is probably also on this meeting, John Bressist, quite stubbornly, I would almost say, John, I hope you don't mind me saying this, has been during the last 15 odd years doing analysis of correlation between GDP and receivables finance. And almost counterintuitively, he has really proven, I think, scientifically, that there is a very, very strong correlation between the growth or the decline of receivables finance and the growth or decline of GDP. And this comes a little bit as a counterintuitive thing, because it has been very much common sense to say, well, you know, during the good economic times, companies need less asset-based factoring need less to sell their invoices to obtain finance, and vice versa. Oppositely, if it's going not so good in the economy, then people need their financing of receivables, which is in reality completely untrue. Receivables finance follows really directly and is really correlated with the GDP figures. And why is that important? Because it can be good news. As we have seen already now that the economic growth is returning very much. You will also see, and it has already been mentioned also by Peter Moreau this morning, the growth of receivables finance will be there. So you can really expect the coming years a growth which will be around twice as big as your GDP for receivables finance. So this was the first general remark about the evolution of receivables finance in all over the world, because that's really the case in all areas and all regions of the world. Now, what I wanted to do next is to share with you some thoughts, some insights, some observations. Three observations to be clear. The first one is about digitization. Now, of course, speaking in a conference of all very well established software technology people, it's almost opening an open door by saying that digitization has become even more important the last year due to the COVID crisis. Of course, we all know that. We all know that everybody has been investing much more money and much faster in terms of digitization. So that's obviously a good thing. It's also a good thing for receivables finance, where you will see better, safer receivables finance coming through. The remark I wanted to add to that, and this is maybe something that has not been mentioned that much yet, is that I believe there is also a need for more harmonization, more working together. I'm not saying that everybody should work with the same IT and the same software. Of course, competition is absolutely great for that, but there are so many silos out there. There's so many informations which are still being that are not being shared with each other, in logistics, for instance, but also in the world of finance. Why isn't it possible to link these silos? So I take as an initiative or as an example, there are quite some initiatives in terms of invoice finance databases to avoid double financing, for instance. But as long as these different systems don't talk to each other, you will never really have the effect that you desire, because you need a scale for that. And in order to need a scale, you do not need one big solution, but you need solutions that talk to each other. So I really think that standardization, harmonization, interoperability will be keywords in the coming years as well. And I'm not the only one. I think there's a very interesting article on GTR that you may find if you go on GTR website, about why trade innovation risks being stranded on digital islands. And I really recommend the reading of that article. And the good thing is there are some very interesting initiatives taking place. I mentioned here the ICC, who is working with digital standards initiatives, but also the ITFA, the Trade and Forfeiting Association, who is working on a number of initiatives. And then myself, I'm involved now since a number of months in the e-invoicing space. I'm becoming Secretary General of the European E-Invoicing Service Providers Association as of tomorrow, to be honest. And there are also quite some initiatives about global interoperability. And I think this can be really important also for receivables finance, because it's all about granularity of information. If we can link information which has been kept in different silos together, this will give additional visibility for risk management, of course, as well. So digitization, yes, but if we can, let's try also to link these different silos. Now, a second observation is about convergence of models. When I was young, which is quite some time ago, I must admit, there was factoring that was with recourse or non-recourse, meaning with risk coverage on the buyers. And then there was invoice discounting and asset-based lending and some new products, but all these were also in silos, all very different products. And even worse, when you were talking in a bank, the trade finance people didn't even know that there were also receivables finance people and vice versa. I know this is a little bit of an exaggeration, but often these two worlds didn't connect and didn't speak at all to each other. So I believe that this is now changing dramatically, probably also because of so much digitization that has been taking place. And you see today that the seller-centric models and the buyer-centric models are really growing together and getting in a certain convergence together. Before you had seller-centric, and then you were working on the basis of a portfolio, and you made your risk analysis on that basis because you didn't have the granularity of information digitally available. Today you have that information available thanks to digital information. Vice versa, the buyer-centric models used to work only on an approved invoice from a buyer who has signed with his blood almost that he will pay at the due date. This is also evolving with artificial intelligence and other techniques in financing that is being offered to suppliers, even without the buyer having completely and entirely already approved an invoice, again, because of digital solutions. So this is also an important trend which we see in the world of open account finance. It's not that much seller or buyer centric anymore, just solutions depending on the situation you are in. And then the third trend, the third observation is about new ways of serving SMEs. So I don't think I tell anything new when I say that banks, maybe a little bit of a generalization, but still most banks are pulling out of certainly international SME receivables finance for good reasons, probably because of KYC, because of the enormous costs of AML, KYC, and so on, and capital costs. So there is the famous or infamous gap, the SME finance gap. But at the same time, there's a lot of liquidity out there looking for solutions, looking for opportunities. Investors, more and more investors, non-bank investors are being interested and being connected to trade assets. And again, the link is there with digitalization, because when you have more granular information available on individual invoices, it is getting more and more possible to create one invoice as one trade asset. One open account invoice can be one trade asset that can be financed by one of these investors. So this is definitely also one of the evolutions which can be important and which will offer growing opportunities also for non-bank financial institutions and for fintechs. Instead of being competitors to banks, it's more and more about working together, and that's what we see these days also more and more. So I'm trying to look at my paper. It's really not so easy from a technical perspective, but I hope I manage more or less. The opportunities, maybe last thing I would like to share, what can be maybe the opportunities for the receivables financiers. Recommendations is a big word, because who are we to give recommendations to all of you, but maybe just some wishful thinking then. But I would say creating bridges between these different islands is absolutely important. That is on one hand between the trade finance people and the open account finance people, which is happening more and more, but I think this is important to continue to do so. But it's also on the corporate side. Everybody will agree with me that generally there is a divorce almost between the finance people and the procurement people. I see this now also in e-invoicing. E-invoicing solutions are generally driven by procurement people who don't necessarily talk with the finance people, and then they end up with two different systems who don't even talk to each other, which is a pity, because it's not really efficient and it's certainly not good for risk management and visibility on the underlying working capital needs. So bridges, absolutely important. The second thing, harmonization, not only through interoperability, as I've mentioned already before, but also the legal way. We also involved with UNCITRAL. I think it's an important initiative, and they will talk about that next week at our meeting in Vienna. UNCITRAL is working on a model law for factoring globally, and these initiatives, that type of initiative, can really help developing a more standardized approach to receivables finance. And then last but not least, a very general recommendation: cooperation. Cooperation is extremely important, and we may have lost a little bit cooperation. We may have lost because of the whole COVID thing, and we are so much in our homes behind screens, sometimes trying to figure out where's the mute button and so on, or where is the screen, the presentation screen, which is in my case now important. So, but we should go back out and start working together and rubbing shoulders with each other. So this is just to use World of Open Account as an example. The community activity, the building of community is important with different learning labs we are developing, trying to co-create almost new initiatives, new ideas. And we are working for the moment at an initiative which is called War Exchange. It's a little bit of a, well, not a reinvention, that would be a big word, but an updated 2.0 for cross-border international factoring, which mixes almost buyer-centric and seller-centric activities, and which also will be discussed in Vienna next week at our annual conference. So these were the ideas I wanted to share with you, Robert. I hope it managed more or less, and I hope also we have some time maybe for one or two questions.
Yes, so thank you very much, Erik. And don't worry, your slides could be seen properly, okay, and we could hear you and follow you greatly. So thank you very much. I think there were very important aspects here, and you, in your final slides, you brought that together and focused on the bridges between the islands, and that's what we also see in our projects, that it is really important, as you mentioned that before, the convergence of a seller-centric, buyer-centric approaches in supply chain finance. So I think there are various aspects that could be covered and supported by proper IT solutions here, and I think that's absolutely great. And I could confirm that cooperation is key here with all the related parties. So maybe one question coming in regarding the challenges of implementing harmonization and standardization initiatives. Sometimes the industry feels that it's a bit slow because it takes time, harmonization processes follows their own rules. So what would be your estimation? How could we benefit from harmonization in the industry in a more fast way? What could we expect, if you could give some insights?
Oh, it's of course a very interesting, at the same time extremely difficult question, Robert. But I think basically in terms of harmonization, there are two big routes or two big ways to achieve that. The first one being probably the public initiative harmonization, which, let's face it, takes generally a lot of time. Once it has the advantage of being democratically steered and followed up, and it's really going bottom up, if you want, but it takes enormous time before you get there, and there will not be a joint or a harmonized playing field for receivables finance in Europe from a legal perspective, for instance, in the coming 10 years. I don't think that will maybe ever happen. I don't know. Who knows? That is one part of the equation. The other part is every form of harmonization which is industry driven. And there I think we can do more. We can go faster. Again, not to say let's work towards one system or that is always the same, but let's try to find the overlap and let's try to work on interoperability. I'm very much focused maybe on interoperability because I'm in this e-invoicing space, but I have seen now with my own eyes, and I'm learning also, of course, every day, that you can perfectly be competitors and still connect and work through the same highways almost. You can run your own train stations, your own trains, but on railways which are common. And this is something that can go faster. And there, of course, you have the industry associations that can play an important role. And again, World of Open Account is one of these initiatives where we try to be a think tank and try to get people in rooms, virtual or real rooms, together to start thinking about that type of harmonization.
Yeah, so fantastic. So thank you very much. And I personally look forward to seeing you then in Vienna at the World Conference next week, Monday, Tuesday. So thank you very much, Erik.